Star Wars is a movie franchise that is arguably both the most beloved franchise of all time, as well as the most mishandled franchise. To still be so beloved despite half the films in the series pretty much sucking, as well as dozens of unsavory alterations to the original films, it speaks as to just how much the original unaltered trilogy dug such a deep spot in so many people's hearts. When it comes to the Star Wars special editions, my initial thoughts on them when they first came out was that they were a nice idea. As a kid, it was a chance for me to see the movies I loved on the big screen at the movie theater for the first time, and despite the changes, that was still a thrill. I can even admit that some of the changes made with the color enhancement and the CGI space battles weren't all too bad. In my opinion, some of those were a neat switch up for those familiar with the ruggedness and charm of the original releases, but didn't necessarily look too out of place when put in there. Tragically though, the alterations have continually gone much deeper than that. If the option still existed to purchase the original cuts of the films, I'm 100% confident that the amount of gripes people would have about the Star Wars Special Editions, DVD and Blu-ray releases would essentially be eradicated. But since George Lucas wants to continually make a good thing worse, the agony lives on. I know that there are a few other lists out there like this one, but I feel like there's a thing or two seldom, if ever, mentioned about a few of these changes. And then of course there's some that are obvious and universally hated, and I'll be covering a bit of both with my personal top 5 worst Star Wars Special Edition changes. Does Greedo shooting first really need any mention? It's one of the most notorious changes to anything, ever. It reduces Han Solo's hard-assed, get-the-hell-out-of-my-face persona that we're first introduced to, and reduces it to simply a retaliatory move to blast Greedo. It also makes Greedo the most worthless bounty hunter in history if he missed with that shot. But aside from what it takes away from the overall intrigue and general badassery of Han Solo's character, this change ties into the next item on the list as well. So rather than talk about only this particular disgrace any longer when it's been maybe the most talked about alteration over time already, let's just get down to how it ties into the next worst thing on this list. I didn't hate this scene at first, partly because I was 11 years old when the special editions came out, but also because I knew who Jabba was already, and the idea of how it affected the overall story flow of the original trilogy was a bit over my head at the time. Adult me has come to his senses though, and there's multiple reasons why, even though I still don't think that even in the original cuts of the movies that Jabba's character was handled ideally. There's small mentions of Jabba throughout episodes 4 and 5, and that's cool, but there's so much else going on that I never felt connected to that part of the story, or at least didn't know what to expect Jabba to be. And I do wish that maybe 1 or 2 more lines of dialogue would have been included explaining who Jabba was and why he was to be feared. But with this special edition scene, it eliminates any sense of that mystery, no matter how small it was to begin with. Not only that, but it pretty much undoes any little bit of fear surrounding Jabba the Hutt moving forward throughout the original films, as Jabba doesn't really come off as intimidating or dangerous in the slightest here. In Jedi, we see Jabba as the kind of guy who, if you mess with him, he'll keep your ass frozen in carbonite just to have you as a trophy, or drop you down to be lunch for the Rancor. And from a purely aesthetic standpoint, this scene makes Jabba look totally inconsistent over the films, and to be honest, I thought in the end they'd completely redo Jabba in all of Jedi as well, although thank God they didn't. But that's not what really sucks about this scene. What sucks is that the inclusion of this scene in the hangar pretty much nullifies the significance of the Greedo encounter in a couple of ways. Firstly, if Jabba is encountering Han in a relatively peaceful manner, why then is a bounty hunter who is essentially working for Jabba trying to shoot Han to death in a bar? Doesn't seem to be in line with what Jabba has in mind. Plus, in Empire, we see Boba Fett tell Darth Vader, "He's no good to me dead." So what is Greedo's motivation here? If Greedo had connected on that shot, seems to put everyone on the losing end of things. Secondly, given that Jabba talks face to face with Han in the previously mentioned peaceful manner, why then does he even have bounty hunters out looking for Han? He seems to have known Han was on Tatooine and even the hangar that the Millennium Falcon was docked in. Seems to be a waste of a lot of people's time to have already dispatched bounty hunters to look for him. It's like George Lucas wanted to just completely shit over every bit of personality that the whole Mos Eisley scene ever had and replace it with his so-called original vision for the film, which in turn doesn't make any sense between the two scenes with Jabba and Greedo. When we originally first met Jabba the Hutt, it was in a scary, dark palace of a ruthless gangster that had us fearing for our heroes' lives as they worked to execute the elaborate rescue plan at the start of Return of the Jedi. It had the true feel of what you'd imagine with a seedy mobster-type setting, and given that that's pretty much what Jabba is, they pretty much nailed it the first time around. So, like most things done well the first time around, better drop a huge freaking turd on them, and this one is so unbelievably horrible. This cartoony shit show is easily the most obnoxious and out-of-place thing out of all the alterations made. It doesn't even slightly blend in with the surroundings, it shatters the ominous environment created so well before, and the song itself sucks so hard. Building off the darkness from the end of Empire and the initial impressions of Jabba's palace being a scary and dangerous place, that all culminates perfectly with our introduction to the Rancor when we see how quickly the switch can be flipped from Jabba enjoying a smooth, jazz-like song playing to the "don't mess with me, I'm Jabba the freaking Hutt, and you can have fun being Rancor food" mentality. Beyond just the new song being totally awful and the animations way over the top, the original song was also fitting as almost like a tribute to the stigma of mobsters hanging out in jazz clubs and bars back in the early to mid 1900s. But yeah, let's throw in these cartoony, out-of-place looking characters that nobody cares about in the slightest and have them kill all of that vibe. Because I'm sure a badass gangster is totally into this kind of music. Just a fair warning, this is going to be a very profanity-laced rant on all of these things that I think just need to be included under the umbrella of one category. You've been warned. What was ever wrong with Obi-Wan's scream at the Sand People, and why the hell has it been modified like 9 times now? Why are stormtroopers riding these slow-ass animals in the desert with all their space technology they have? All these new stormtroopers added here, and they're just standing there when intruders are on board. Why are you just standing there? The appearance of the Emperor in The Empire Strikes Back was fine. If you wanted to put in the guy who played him in every other film, at least don't make him look like shit. Keep him shrouded in darkness and mysterious to the audience because that's so much of what was cool about him. Explains why you felt the need to dick with it. Dick. And why would you change the dialogue of the Emperor in the scene? It was perfect and cryptic and exciting, and now it's just a dumbed down shitty shell of the original scene. Why the hell would you put Jango Fett's voice in there? Ever think maybe Boba's voice was different and got jacked up over the years by being a hardened badass bounty hunter? And if you're going to replace the original voice, could we not have the new guy sound as unbelievably disinterested as he does in the new takes? Shitty voice acting on his part. Speaking of which, why change a line from Vader without James Earl Jones? It was fucking great as it was, and now it's generic and boring. The Sarlacc pit was fine too, don't add a dumbass mouth and tentacles to it. Vader didn't need to scream no another fucking time. This scene used to be a legendary example of how emotion and inner conflict can be displayed without the need for verbal or facial cues. Now it's just dumbed the fuck down and shits all over the climactic scene of the entire original trilogy. And lastly, everyone wants to forget Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader, not having that smeared in our fucking faces by you jamming him into yet another Star Wars film. Admittedly, this isn't the most annoying change made to the original trilogy over its many revisions, but to me, this makes possibly the least sense of anything when you consider all the events of episodes 1 through 6. The Rebel Alliance was a small, very small band of rebels fighting against the evil Galactic Empire which possessed manpower and technological power way beyond anything the rebels could put forward. And as far as we knew, this small, dedicated alliance was the only significant resistance to the Empire in the galaxy. So when the Emperor is killed and the second Death Star destroyed, why then are places like Naboo and Coruscant celebrating this as well? Not only were those places part of the Galactic Empire, they practically facilitated the creation of it. First off, Palpatine was your fucking senator, Naboo. Your dumbass oversight of him taking advantage of the 14-year-old queen you elected in order to create more political power for himself set this whole shitstorm in motion. And you, Coruscant, this was the Galactic Empire that you cheered the creation of back in episode 3. Remember how Liberty died with thunderous applause? Yeah, that was you assholes. You applauded that. Basically, if this many people are celebrating the demise of the Empire, why then was the Rebel Alliance such a small band of fighters? If these planets were celebrating, they should have been part of the fight. In actuality, they're part of the problem, and it makes no sense at all for these planets to be part of this final celebration. I'd believe it if there were some small pockets of disgruntled citizens celebrating who hated the Emperor and are happy he's dead. But definitely not on the large scale that they show. Not to mention, these are the same people who were apparently so easily made to believe that all of the Jedi just suddenly went rogue and evil, and that's why they were all murdered at the exact time this Empire was created. On that premise, shouldn't they be fearful of this Return of the Jedi? The celebration, though. This was the Rebels' victory because they earned it and they fought for it. You guys on Naboo and Coruscant didn't do jack shit other than create and perpetuate the problems. But I guess whatever needs to be done will be done in order to shove these crappy planets from the crappy prequels down our throats a little bit more, even though nobody ever cared at all for these places. So that's my list of my least favorite changes. If you've got thoughts of your own or want to talk about your least favorite changes, feel free to share them in the comments below, and if you swear a lot too, that's totally fine. Be sure to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already by clicking the annotation, and thanks for watching, everybody.